start with the preparation for law school. Um, my first question for you would be, for an applicant who's applying for fall 2021, besides the LSATs, what else, should that applicant be doing, in terms of resume or personal statement?
Sure, you could start thinking about all of those things, but the thing you really need to do in advance is recommendation letters, because you cannot control all of that. You need the other person to put in the work and devote the time to it. So I'd be thinking about who to ask and making those requests early.
Okay. Would you say for a professor that you know really well, like I know really well?
That's a great option. Yeah, you should definitely get academic letters if you can.
How do you feel about, asking one from an academic advisor? Since, let's say, like, I don't have a second professor to ask.
And what is their experience with you?
I guess like during college, work with me through the entire process of college, I would say.
How
So,
did they work with you?
he like advises me and give me guidelines of, the next step, and he knows the ultimate goal is to go to law school.
Has this person evaluated your work?
Um, not particularly. Um, I guess no.
Then I would say a professor is probably a better option because they've actually evaluated your work, like papers or exams or written material, and they can really give a sense of what your writing ability is, for example.
Okay. Because I also have another person who I interned for in Italy. He wrote me a recommendation letter as well, but it's in form of paper. So I'm assuming I would have to ask him, to do it electronically through
Yeah,
the.
I would ask them so they can submit it directly to LSAC because it can't come from you. It has to come from the recommender directly.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So in terms of personal statement, what would be the first step to begin? Because I've no clue in, writing it, and how long would it be?
Yeah, sure. Well, the length is simple. That's 2 pages double spaced. Typically, it could vary from school to school. Each school might have their own guidelines, but I would look to make the final draft around that length.
Okay.
Then as for the topic and getting started, you can write about nearly anything. The question is how you execute it. And
Okay.
so I'd be thinking at this point, of course, about brainstorming topics, coming up with a couple of ideas. What are
Okay.
some ideas that you've thought of if you've considered any at all?
Um, well, I guess I could describe any obstacles in life. Would you say academically or just in general?
Yeah, obstacles are a great theme. Oh, obstacles and how you overcame them, I'd say is a good roadmap to think of for personal statements because it shows that you've encountered challenges before, you've
Okay.
grown from them and you've learned from them. And law school itself is a challenge. And so they want to know that you're the kind of person who will persist in the face of adversity, whatever form it may come in.
Okay. Would you start by like introducing like myself, or, you know, starting, yeah, like the first, I guess, paragraph or.
You don't need to. You don't need to. They'll have your resume.
Oh,
They'll have all the materials. And so you don't need to say your name. You don't need to say anything about your background in particular. You could jump right in.
okay. Okay. So I guess just jump right in, like whatever, the main point of the whole, and the whole personal statement. And I guess, does it have to be different for each school?
No, not at all. You can use the same thing for all schools with possibly slight adjustments based on the school in particular. And so obviously, if you're mentioning a school's name, you want to make sure you change that. And that's so risky. I would recommend against it if possible. If you're
Right.
writing a separate essay about why their school in particular, then of course that requires some personalization that you could swap things out as necessary. But the main personal statement, typically not.
Typically not. Okay. And then, okay, it depends on like each law school if they have like an extra essay for you to write.
Yeah, that might be the place where you give it some more specifics. But overall, the main personal statement could be pretty much the same for all schools.
Would you say to incorporate like any programs that I'm interested, in that particular law school into personal statement?
Yeah, you could mention that towards the end, or you could mention that all in a separate why their school in particular essay, where you talk about particular programs or clinics to show you've done the research and that you're a good fit for that program.
Okay. Okay. Um,
Are there any topics that you've considered for the personal statement? Is that something you want to talk through? Would you find that useful?
yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I guess like my certain topic is, um, I believe came here for, not long ago. 6 years ago, I came to the States, from a completely different country and learning English through all that. And I guess the other part is that was, because my mom was sponsoring me to come here, and it took her about 7 years, so I guess that was an obstacle to, kind of live through that and waiting for that to happen. And then it finally happened, came here and did all this. So I guess that's my main topic, to write.
That could be a great topic. Out of what you said there, I would focus more on the learning English part, as well as your struggle, because you said it took your mom this long, that she was the one sponsoring you. You don't want to make it about her. And I find a lot of times folks will shift it from the personal to somebody else. So I'm not sure if you would have taken it in that direction otherwise, but I just want to make sure to flag that as a potential area you could go off track. So instead, keep it on your end. So when you were not in the US yet, what was happening for you as you waited, and maybe there were some ups and downs. Maybe you thought you were closer and then you were actually further away. So some back and forth there, and what you were doing on your end in the meantime. And then also what happened after you arrived in the US, additional struggles you may have faced.
Right. In terms of, like just culture shock and everything,
Yeah. No, there's plenty you could unpack there.
Yeah. The problem is, there's so much to fit into 1 to 2 pages. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you've got 2 pages, but I would also write more and then cut it down. So you could write 5 pages if you want, and then cut out the excess, what doesn't truly need to be there, what doesn't truly fit. And then after that, you could just chop out little individual words here and there to make it more jam-packed and fast-moving.
Okay.
Allow you to include as much information as possible.
Okay. When you say 2 pages, is it like 1 page is front and back, or 2 pages front and back?
Yeah, so it'd be 1 page front if you're counting front and back. So two separate pages, around 500 words.
Okay. Thank you. That makes sense. For the resume, how lengthy should it be? Because I've heard all stories of it could be longer than a page, it could be 2 pages,
Typically 1 page. Typically you want to keep it to 1 page. There are folks with lengthy work histories and work experience where it could go far longer than that, especially for older non-traditional applicants who may have a lot more work experience. But in most cases, you really want to work to limit it to 1 page. And that's hard, of course. Everyone's got to cut things out, but cut out whatever you need to, and then cut a little bit beyond that, especially for things that are older or not as relevant to law school.
Okay. Because I was thinking, because I have a resume that, it's for a job, it's a page, but for law school, would you say to add like relevant coursework of like courses that I, took in college?
Which coursework are you referring to?
Well, I'm an econ major, so I mean, I took like criminal justice class, political science, political government, along this area. It wasn't too many, but I definitely took a few. So
if you're able to fit it concisely, that's great. But that's one thing I would cut if you need to, because they are going to get your transcript. They are going to see it.
Okay, so just a work experience, and that leads to my next question would be, for an applicant like me without a lot of work experience, like how would I make my resume stand out or distinguish from other people?
Well, first off, you don't really need to have work experience that's relevant to law school.
Okay.
That's nice to have, but it's not necessary. So I wouldn't really be thinking too much about how do you make your resume stand out in particular. I would focus actually much more on the personal statement, because that gives you more of a chance to show who you are and reveal another side to yourself. Your resume is your resume. unless you're going to do something radically different between now and the fall, assuming you're applying this fall. I wouldn't worry too much about how to dress up your previous experience to be relevant to law school. It is what it is. You can mention things as appropriate, but I would focus more on making your personal statement colorful and memorable. And then, of course, once you finish with the LSAT.
Okay. Okay. Because I mean, I've heard other, people saying how, law school doesn't like it if you're doing nothing, except studying for the LSAT, let's say, which is right now what I'm doing, So I was thinking to either find a job after the LSAT, right, before I start law school next year, hopefully if I get in.
Yeah, of course.
So, okay.
Well, once you're done with the LSAT, if you want to get a job and you have the time, then certainly that's a good thing to do if you're able. I think they'll also be particularly understanding this year, given COVID-19, that the job market's so difficult, the economy is rough, that a lot of folks will be out of work through no fault of their own, and they'll be understanding of that. So that's not a reason to not try, but if you're not able to find a job that makes sense for you, I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Feel free to reach out and send me a rough draft after you've written one. I'd be happy to take a look.
Thank you. Okay.
Of course. Before we sign off, what would you say is the biggest insight you got from our call today?
Well, from our call today, definitely give me the right direction, in preparation for law school besides LSAT, on personal statement and definitely resume. So thank you.
My pleasure. Keep in touch and I'll see you in class soon.
All right. Thank you for everything.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.